Yes, yes, we's back, precious. We is back.
Peter Jackson is going back to Middle-earth. Let's not bury the lead. From The Hollywood Reporter, quote, on Warner Brothers Discovery's first quarter earnings conference call on Thursday, CEO David Zaslav said that the company is now in the early stages of script development for the new Lord of the Rings movies, which he says they anticipate releasing in 2026, and will explore storylines yet to be told. The first film, from New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers Pictures, will be called Lord of the Rings: The Hunt for Gollum, working title, with Andy Serkis set to star and direct the feature. Zaslav says that director Peter Jackson and his longtime writing partners Fran Walsh and Philippa Bowens will be involved every step of the way. Bowens and Walsh will write the screenplay. The deal covers 2 films in the franchise. After suffering through the Rings of Power show, those stupid Magic the Gathering cards, and that silly Gollum game, I'd lost all hope about any future adaptations of Tolkien's works. But in comes Jackson, Walsh, and Bowens, and they go, Eusteliachnat, Esteliohan, Estelio Amen. And I do trust them. I mean, I saw the Hobbit movies too, so I know it can get bad, but as the Rings of Power showed us, it could be much worse. I trust that the trio will do a solid job if given the time to write the script to the best of their ability. Andy Serkis has also proven himself a fine actor and director, so again, if he's given the time to get his vision in place, he can make a great film. I think it really does come down to that single point: time. What hurt the Hobbit films more than anything else was that they were rushed to meet the release date. I think the problems in the films would have been mostly sorted out if Warner Bros. Had given Peter Jackson the extra year of pre-production he requested. According to the article, the film has been in the works for a while and it's not due until 2026, so hopefully that's enough time to get everything together. Apparently the film will focus on Gollum, and Aragorn and Gandalf's attempt to find him prior to the events of the Lord of the Rings. Now, I know what you're thinking. Didn't they make that Gollum game about the same thing? And didn't that game suck? Yes and yes. But, and this is a huge but, a film is different from a game. It's hard to adapt Gollum's tales into a game. There's not much to do other than skulk around. As a film, however, this could work. The script needs to be very tight, and they'll probably need to condense things, but if Bowens and Walsh can nail it, we're in for something special because they can show some of the things hinted at in the books and films, especially related to Aragorn and him stepping up into his role as Isildur's heir. They do have their work cut out for them though, because we're talking about 77 years of events to condense down. After losing the ring to Bilbo, Gollum hangs around the mountains for a few years, and then travels to try to find Bilbo and get the ring back. He follows Bilbo's trail east, making it through Mirkwood all the way to Dale. The Mirkwood elves and Gandalf track Gollum the whole time, but eventually, Gandalf moves on to other matters, and he and the elves leave Gollum to his own schemes. Around the same time, Sauron reappears. Gollum winds up in Mordor and meets Shelob, but ends up getting captured by Sauron. It's not clear exactly when Sauron finds Gollum, but it's somewhere around 2490, and it releases Gollum in 3017, meaning Sauron imprisons and tortures Gollum for some 17 to 37 years. During that time, Gollum reveals that he had the One Ring, and mentions the Shire and the Hobbits. It's also during that time that Gandalf finally realizes that Bilbo has the One Ring. He tries to pick up Gollum's trail, but it's been too long, and Gollum is held by Sauron. When Gollum is released, Aragorn soon tracks down Gollum, captures him, and eventually gives him to Gandalf, who in turn interrogates Gollum and then leaves him with the Mirkwood elves. Orcs later attack Mirkwood, allowing Gollum to escape. He winds up in Moria but can't get through to the other side, and that's where the Fellowship finds him later that fall. Assuming Bowens and Walsh follow what they did in the films, they cut out the 17 years Frodo had the ring before he went on his journey. The title implies that the film will be about Gandalf and Aragorn's search for Gollum in the year before the events of the Lord of the Rings. Bowens and Walsh would pretty much have to make up all the events because Tolkien is never clear about what Gandalf and Aragorn did. We have a vague idea of where they traveled and that they faced some ordeals during that time. We also know that the rumor of Isildur's heir was making the rounds, particularly in the regions where Gollum travels before Aragorn catches him near the Dead Marshes. There is some stuff they can use, but most of it they'll have to make up. That's a little concerning given what happened with the Hobbit films. Like I said, that script will need to be tight because it's easy to make a mess of this. However, even when things do become a mess, it's still better than anything from the Rings of Power. Speaking of which, this film isn't the only one in the works at WB. The company cut a deal with Embracer Group to develop multiple films based on The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, meaning there's nothing stopping Warner Brothers from making their own film about the forging of the Great Rings. I bet Amazon is kicking themselves for not returning somebody's phone calls. All of them could have been involved in your projects, Amazon, but you chose otherwise. I know it's the wrong franchise, but all the same, Warner Brothers, do it. I would love to see something remotely close to what Tolkien wrote involving those stories. A Celebrimbor-focused film would be great. Now, as much as I don't want to admit it, all this could end up being a hot mess. That's especially true if WB keeps up with the current studio trend of wanting films and shows to be infinitely malleable until their release date. It's not unusual for studios to meddle with films in ways that wind up hurting the movies, but studios' recent reluctance to let anyone have a vision hasn't worked out well for anybody. Sure, letting someone experiment might lead to a Madam Web, but it might also lead to a Barbie. Jackson and his team made New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers Discovery billions of dollars. They adapted one of the hardest books to adapt and made it work. They know what they're doing. Estelio Han. Estelio Hoon. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.